speaking as if you've already won the Champions Trophy when you're about to play against India.
They're not athletes. They're humans who know how to hit a ball with the bat and they know how to throw a ball with the hand, but they're not athletes. 4 games in, Sam, of the Champions Trophy 2025. We had some exciting ones, some not as exciting, but every single team have played at least one game so far. A lot to unravel here, all the way from chicken roast and Coca-Cola to England's shocking defeat. Shocking, I say, because not because England we expected them to beat Australia, but rather because of how they lost that game, and then all the way to Pakistan and their nerves in their first home tournament in decades. So, where do we want to start?
Let's talk about the hosts and how they're in a pretty tight predicament now after that first game.
Aren't they? Yes. I mean, it's a case now where they have to beat India tomorrow in tomorrow's game, as match day 2 starts, and well, it's gonna be rough. I assume they're flying over to the Emirates right now, and some say it's more of an advantage for them. That was their home ground for around 10 years, so it might be more of their home ground, but I mean, I don't see them winning that game anymore. It's just, it was so sad at how slow they took that game. Like, I don't understand it. They didn't start off very bad. It's just that second innings was that last 10 overs of the New Zealand innings, and then the entirety of the Pakistan innings.
No, honestly, I mean, I was really disappointed because, come on, they've had like 3 games with New Zealand already. They had 2 warm-up games. They were both in Pakistan, so they sort of knew how they were going to play. I think, was it a bit of nerves that, they're really hosting? But I don't even want to say a bit of nerves, because did you see the stadium? It wasn't as packed, man. So I don't really know what really happened with Pakistan. Very poor decision-making from them as well, because I think it's good that we talk about Fakhar Zaman, right? And he was injured.
I think it was a big shock to me how, he got injured, of course, in that first innings. But in the second innings, why are you playing him at number 4? When you've got a pretty large total to reach, you've lost a couple of early wickets there. Your run rate has not started off well. Why are you bringing on someone who can't rotate the strike? At that point, you should have other batsmen come in at that point and then save Fakhar for a moment towards the end when maybe you need, I don't know, like a 50 runs from 25 balls, because all he can do is hit at this point. He doesn't really have the legs to run, and I mean, they wanted to play it safe. Babar Azam tried to play the anchoring role.
Yeah, I was disappointed with Babar. I will say.
Exactly. No, I'm fine, because it's not necessarily a bad thing, but he just had no support on any side. Will O'Rourke with 3 big wickets. We talked about him a little bit, didn't we? Last month. He was in our team of the month a couple months ago. But 3 huge wickets for him. He got 2 of the top order batsmen, as well as Kushdil Shah, who went on a big hitting spree for a while, but I mean, at that point it was too late, wasn't it? Let's talk a bit about New Zealand though. How good were they? I mean, they played with such ease. It didn't look like they were struggling. They didn't look like they were a team who haven't played ODIs in a year,
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised.
Will Young, I talked about him. He was my player to watch for New Zealand. Will Young, I said, he hasn't really ever gotten going, and he's had a couple of good trips to Pakistan, and I thought this tournament would be big for him, and hopefully he can keep it up from a New Zealand perspective, but he did well. And then obviously Tom Latham, what a comeback. Yeah, I think there was a spree where he scored 1 run in a combined 5 games. They both played really good, but my player of this game, who I think was absolutely outstanding, was none other than Glenn Phillips. He had a brilliant game with the bat, and then what a catch he took. Oh my god, he was flying on that one. He's like an epitome of an all-rounder, isn't he? What can this guy not do?
What he cannot do, and what he did really improve on, was catching. An interesting statistic is that since 2023, the 4th highest in catch drops, but then all of a sudden he just does what he did last game.
He takes these insane catches, but he drops the worst. Like, he drops all the dollies that come up to him. That statistic you mentioned about the top 4 catches of since 2023, most catches dropped. Any idea who's at number 1 on that list?
Is it a certain hitman? Is it a batsman?
Rohit Sharma. And I think that's a good segue to move into the next game. India versus Bangladesh.
Yeah,
Akshar Patel, what a hat-trick that would have been.
Absolutely.
Had Rohit Sharma not dropped that, and he was furious with himself. You saw him banging the field. He wasn't happy with that one.
One thing I will say about this game is that we're really happy to have this player back, and he was my player to watch, who did very well, and that was Mohammad Shami, who picked up
Yeah.
5.
Yeah. 60 plus ICC tournament wickets, and it's insane. Like in like less than 20 games. Which is like it's insane how good he is at these ICC tournaments.
I saw he's really in Bumrah's shadow. He's one player that it's really because of injuries. And he's a tournament player. I think he also broke the record for fastest to, I think, was it 200 wickets in the least amount of balls played.
Yeah.
So he broke that record as well. He's a wicket taker. That is what he is. He is a wicket taker.
India just completely outplayed Bangladesh in this game. The game was over after the first 10 overs. Like that collapse that, were they 30 for 5? It's insane. And it takes us back to the night before.
Absolutely. And if you couldn't guess by the thumbnail, or if you were confused as to what I was doing in the thumbnail,
the chicken and a Coke.
Yes, I was merely mimicking what the entire Bangladesh team were doing the night before the match. So for context, what happened was that as they came into the UAE, a former Bangladesh legend, Tamim Iqbal, he also joined the team and decided, well, you know what, let us treat all these players to a king's roast, which had Coke bottles everywhere. I mean, like oily food. Eating as if you've already won the Champions Trophy when you're about to play against India. It's absolutely absurd. It is one of the most embarrassing things I've seen, and it sort of sums up this team.
They're not athletes. They're not athletes. They're people. They're humans who know how to hit a ball with the bat, and they know how to throw a ball with the hand, but they're not athletes. It's so disappointing. It's insane. Like, we're obviously going to talk a little bit more about Australia in a bit as well. Even in other sports, the greatest athletes, they care so much about how they treat themselves, And here they are eating chicken roast and Coca-Cola.
Looking at India, because I saw a post that they're talking about Virat Kohli, because Virat Kohli, he himself, even though he's had his slumps, and although he didn't have a bad game last game, the discipline he has, I think he left drinking like fizzy drinks off the table, even heavy food like biryani, as is popular in India. For the past 5 to 10 years, he hasn't even touched any of that. And whereas he could retire at any point, he could not care about it and say that, okay, you know what, I'm the best batsman of my generation, you leave it all on the table, an undisputed legacy. But he still pushes himself to sort of have this discipline, where you have this Bangladesh team that have been trying to, edge up, see that the mentality isn't even there. Even the senior players, I was especially disappointed that Tamim Iqbal, an ex-legend who should be guiding these youngsters, took them to this dinner. Mushfiqur Rahim, Muhammadullah, these are the ones that a lot of the players playing right now looked up to, and it's just not there. The discipline is just not there.
I remember in the 2019 World Cup when Shakib Al Hasan put his everything into it, and I remember there was a lot of talk about how the rest of the Bangladesh team weren't, helping him out, and there was an Instagram picture of Tamim Iqbal smoking shisha in a lounge in London. They're not athletes. I mean, they're there for the fun. They're there for the food. It's fine, do that, but just don't take the money. Just take that money, give that money somewhere else. You don't deserve that money.
You could see the effects of this. So the only notable thing from that Bangladesh game was in the Bangladesh innings was Tauhid Hridoy's century, right?
Yeah, and they got a bit of support from Jakar Ali, but I mean,
but in that century, he fell to the ground with cramps. So that really makes you think that if he was, at a physical peak, with a proper diet, how much further he could have taken that.
The moment that score went 30 for 5, I knew there was no coming back. I mean, no matter how hard of a fight Hridoy and Jakar Ali put together, what are you going to do? Bowl India out for 60 runs? Like, you're not going to win that game anymore, and you shouldn't want to watch it anymore. I mean, big credit to India, though, in their innings, when they came out to bat. Shubman Gill, vice captain now of the team, he played brilliantly, very sensibly. Pakistan and Bangladesh in a big spot of bother.
tough times for them. So yeah, I think the only other notable point was the catch drop from Bangladesh as well. So fielding disaster. It's just a disastrous game. Disastrous game overall. So I think we move from this to, I would say, the team that has been overshadowing Bangladesh recently and how they also got off to a tough start, and that's Afghanistan. So
Yeah, Afghanistan, South Africa. You expected more from Afghanistan, didn't you? I mean, I did as well.
Absolutely. I was
not up to their mark.
Yeah, no, as I mentioned before, that I am a Afghanistan supporter in secret because I've been really impressed with how they've been doing in ICC tournaments. But the one thing that I was a bit, really looking forward to seeing them improve in this match, they haven't really overcome, and that is the nerves. Afghanistan, the thing in these tournaments I've seen is that if they have a good opening partnership, Gurbaz, Zadran, if they get off strong, they tend to win those games. The rest follows.
They just rely too much on that. It's that middle order is just so shaky. They're so I don't think I've ever seen them like carry Afghanistan to a win. They rely so much on that top order, and then that late order from Rashid Khan, and sometimes they had Omar Zai for a while in there. But like it's 4, 5, and 6. That's where they seem to struggle.
Absolutely. I mean, as it was, it's pressure, and there's also added pressure because the score was so high. It would have been their highest ever ODI chase, so it's a lot of pressure on them. The only notable innings was Rahmat Shah. He did well. He put up 90.
Never get a situation where they have multiple people performing.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what South Africa did. Look at it. They had 3 half centuries. And a century.
Because the next highest from Rahmat Shah was 18 runs.
Talking about South Africa a little bit. Ryan Wriggleton. He was my player to watch. Player to watch. I mean, who would have thought Ryan Wriggleton? I mean, I've had some misses, a couple of misses here and there. And Bryden Carse was my pick for England. Probably the worst player in England in any jersey out of the 22 players on the field today. But yeah, I mean, it's you win some, you lose some.
That is true.
But Ryan Rickelton was one that I
and Aiden Markram from my end.
Markram for you as well.
He was still on strike. Yeah, he was still on strike as well. So could have done more if he came earlier.
And yeah, we got Rabada and Ngidi with some great wickets. Will O'Rourke for New Zealand as well. Mohammad Shami for India, of course. It's getting some good. It's like because they're such like flat tracks as well. They're not necessarily bowling tracks. So like the thing is for the pace bowlers, for the batsmen, it's like you either hit it, you either get it or you don't, which is why you see some other bowlers like Shaheen Afridi getting whacked everywhere. Yeah, high scoring games so far, and the highest scoring game happened today. And the highest total, I think, was what England scored in the first innings, Champions Trophy tournament, not an ICC tournament, only for Australia to
overshadow it.
Cut it down. Went right from an English show to an English show, one might say.
Yeah, and very interesting is that Inglis was born in Leeds, so he could have.
He grew up there.
Yeah, he could have been on the other side, but
and I think he's joined a big crowd now of David Warner, Shane Watson, and Glenn Maxwell as one of only 4 players now who have scored a century in every format. Oh, that partnership was so crucial between him and Alex Carey. And Inglis was, I mean, his shots that he started playing eventually just so good. Like everything he touched just like over the rope somehow, like either a 4 or a 6. And I think he was on a different level today.
Yeah, no, in the beginning, as it started, you really thought that Australia was in a spot of bother because Matt Short, my prediction, was the only one who stayed in the, for the first bit. Steve Smith and the rest, they were just falling down slowly, but eventually they did find their footing, with Inglis and Carey, as you mentioned. So
what's interesting though, Sam?
Yeah.
Look at how we're like so far into this conversation about this game, and we haven't even mentioned Ben Duckett. I mean, that's how you know, like, how sad that is. Like, you just scored 160 plus.
Is the highest in Champions Trophy. Is the highest by any individual in the Champions Trophy.
And you're not being talked about because, I mean, your team just blew it for you. Your team just absolutely blew it for you. Jofra Archer today, I think towards the end was just, you could see on his face, his teammates were patting him on the back because he was not in a spot, like he was upset and his emotions were taking over. Even when he was playing, he He dropped a very crucial catch. Eventually, the wicket was taken of Alex Carey, but he was unfortunate for him. But I mean, Archer's a player I really like, but I mean, it
Yeah,
just
no,
wasn't
me
it.
too. I was really excited because, he's been on and off with injuries. He was finally back. I was expecting, oh my God, Archer's back. Similar to Shami, it's gonna be a great show for him. And I said, it started off well, but it just didn't continue. That was the biggest issue. One thing I do want to say about England is that when it comes to their batting, we talked about last time how they've been clinging on to a lot of legacy players and so forth, but it is really refreshing to see that they still have some strike power. Ben Duckett, he was really his score alone. That was 75% of Bangladesh's innings, if you wanna talk about it, talk about it like that. But yeah, he's been good in tests and he's looking to be good in ODI. So that was really good to see, but it's just that he didn't have that support from the
Yeah, I
batting end.
mean, again, it's just like he got a bit from Joe Root there. I mean, Joe Root's always been one of England's best in the last decade or so, more even. But I mean, it's
Yeah,
we talked about England's batting, and honestly, for starters, I was a bit surprised that they got to that 350 to begin with. I mean, take Ben Duckett out of that equation, though. I mean, he's not going to score 160 every game, and then
exactly.
what? And
Yeah,
then what?
Harry Harry Brook was really disappointing. Harry Brook was really
He was
disappointing.
disappointing. I mean, he's a talented player, and I think he can rise up. But like England's batting, I think, is a little bit a tricky thing. And I mean, they might. I'm interested to see now how that South Africa game goes for them. The South Africa England game. I mean, it's going to be an interesting one to watch. But Australia, one other thing. I mean, without those three bowlers, Cummins, Stark, and Hazelwood, we talked about this a couple of on our I think our very first episode. We said
Yeah, and we didn't
what's
put up
gonna
a reel.
happen when Australia lose all three of these fast bowlers? And now this is a test where they're not playing with any of these three fast bowlers. And I
And
mean,
then
it
it would have
proved
been a
that
lower score. It would have been a much lower score, I feel like, if these three were here, and it would have been a much
definitely,
easier game for Australia.
yeah. Looking ahead, I guess Matchday 2 coming up, starting tomorrow, real quick.
It's the biggest one, the one we've all been waiting for, and it is do or die for Pakistan because
India, Pakistan, yeah.
they need a lot of things to go their way if they don't win tomorrow.
One of them being Bangladesh beating New Zealand, and let's be real, is that happening? I mean, you never know. It's cricket,
It is,
but
yeah. You never
it's
know.
gonna be difficult.
But that is a big, big asking. So the best thing Pakistan can do is win that game.
But like, I guess before we end off, one last thing I want to ask you is, we made our video obviously of players to watch. After this first match day, do you have a player who you didn't list, but you're now excited to see how they do?
Actually, I have two players. One is I really like the way Will O'Rourke is bowling. I want
Yeah.
to see how far he can take it because I think between Rourke and Mohammad Shami, there could be a wicket taking battle. And from the batting end, we have 7 centurions, mind you, coming at the end of match day 1. I am looking at Inglis now. It's surprising to say I'm not looking at Ben Duckett, but I'm also looking at Tom Latham, interestingly enough, because Tom
Tom Latham.
Latham.
I mean, I'm excited to see Glenn Phillips. I mean, he's my one. I think brilliant in that last 10 overs against Pakistan when he came out to bat, and those last 10 overs are always make or break.
Yeah.
If you can get that score up, like even today in the game, I mean, Australia really accelerated towards the end, which is why they didn't even finish all 50 overs and they reached the target. And a lot of that help came as they built up the first 40 overs. They had a really consistent run rate, a really good run rate as well, around 6.5-ish. The required rate was a bit more, it's like about 7.5-ish, and they just came in the end and exploded. And
Yeah, no,
you need to really leave room in those few overs, which Pakistan didn't do, which Afghanistan didn't do, which Bangladesh didn't do either, which led to the demise of all three of those teams.
absolutely. So yeah, so we have some new players to watch here, and that is match day 1, and we're looking forward to the fire of match day 2.
Yeah, and stay subscribed because we have a lot coming for this Champions Trophy. Next couple of match days, a lot of coverage here and there, and I guess stay safe. Don't drink too much Coca-Cola and chicken roast. But until next time, it's good morning, good evening, and good night.
Wherever in
Wherever.
the world that you are.